All right, here we go, Scotty, with the Tesla 2020 Model 3. Want to know about him? Well, here's the car. It's been driven for a little while, and I'm going to tell you all the truths about him. No doubting it's a beautiful car. And she's customized it. She put her own wheels on, which I agree with her. I like the look of these wheels better. And she also blacked out the Tesla to go with the black. I think that's a really good modification. Check the inside here. Look, you just push on the door handles and open it comes. It may seem odd to some people because there's no instrument panel here. It's all over here. It's kind of odd because it looks like you're driving down the road and there's nothing there, like you're on a shelf or something. But all the information, of course, is here. That does practically everything. Your maps, what's happening with the electric motor and the battery, your infotainment system, everything's in there. And it's got a beautiful black interior. I gotta say, it's nice. And the tinted sunroofs on it, there's a lot of leg room in this thing. Now, of course, it's an electric car. So people are always worried, well, how far you can go? Well, the lady who owns this, she's gone 235 miles and then recharged it. That's the furthest trip she went. And how much does it cost to recharge it? Well, most people like this, she says, usually costs about $6. Now, on the other hand, you gotta realize the price of the car. Now, this was like a $44,000 car, but she had negative equity, so she's got more closer to $60,000 in the car now, but that's because of the equity, not because of the car. She could have gotten a car for about $44,000, $45,000. So the $6 fill-ups, you still have to equate it to the price of the car. Now, if you're near a Tesla supercharging center, when it's empty, it's taking her about 45 minutes to fully charge it up. But if you have a 240-volt charger at your house, take about 8 hours to fully charge. And if you plug it into 120 volts, you're going to be waiting a couple days. So you want to get a 240 charger if you buy one of these. Now, this is a classic rear-wheel drive version. The electric motors are in the back. Now, being rear-wheel drive has a few disadvantages with the power that this thing has. She recently spun out in the rain, hit a curb. It didn't do any body damage, just bent stuff underneath. If she would have spent more money and got an all-wheel drive one, it probably wouldn't have spun out. She was definitely going too fast for the rainy weather. But if it would have been all-wheel drive, I doubt that she would have lost control of the car. Now, since she bought this one, the price has actually gone down to $37 for this model. If she would have bought the four-wheel drive one today, the four-wheel drive version would have been $47,000. So you're paying like $9,000 extra for the all-wheel drive. But take my advice, if you drive like a maniac and these are very fast cars, get the all-wheel drive version. Pretty quiet car, but listen. It does make a little sound because by law they have to make noise. They don't want you sneaking up on people. Outsiders have to hear something. All right, really, the only thing you hear now is the tires. You hear the tires on the ground. They're always going to make noise because there is some friction. You can't get rid of the tire noise. It's always going to have a little bit of sound. Slow down, you can feel the reach under a brake. And look at this, I took my foot off the gas and it stopped before the stop sign. These things are very easy to stop and they're regenerating a bunch of electricity. No worry about the California stop. Look, this thing stops itself. I didn't have my foot on the brake. Oh, here are the tires going down the road. It's a new experience. It still freaks me out when I look straight ahead. It looks like I'm looking at somebody's kitchen counter. You gotta look over there for the information, but it is weird. It's like you're not driving a car. And there's no gear shift over here. There's an electronic one here, though. It doesn't take long to figure this stuff out. It's only common sense. It's got the usual park, reverse, neutral drive. Take it out for a little country drive, quiet, and it does handle like a dream. It's all electronic, and they figured the computer stuff out, so there's no oversteer or understeer. It's really a well-handling vehicle. And as we all know, and if you don't, you're gonna know now, electric motors have 100% torque and power as soon as you step on the gas. So we'll step on the brake first, and then we'll step on the gas. So here we are, nice and quiet. Let's step on the gas. And does it take off? Yes, it takes off. Now, maybe not as fast as the 1,250 horsepower Supra that I drove a few months ago on this same road, but hey, it's got a lot of oomph to it. And you have no loss control. Look, no hands, track's perfectly straight. Great for country drives. Because if you notice up above, there's all kinds of telephone poles. They do have electricity here in Tennessee. Now we're getting a little of the twisties. This thing handles like a dream. It really has a good suspension system. There's no arguing that. It's not raining or snowing or ice. If you live in snowy ice conditions, I'd say fork out extra for the all-wheel drive. For you numbers freaks, it's 285 horsepower, but 307 pound-feet of torque. Just understand, that's electric power, not gasoline. You get in a gasoline car, you gotta rev the engine up. The horsepower is until higher RPMs, but this is an electric motor running off a big old electric battery. As soon as you step on it, you get full power all the time and full torque. So it's completely different. There's nothing to rev up. You just step and go. There's no rev mashing. There's no shifting gears. And of course, there's no normal maintenance. You don't have gasoline engine, oil filter, spark plugs. Forget that. You don't have a transmission. You got to change the fluid in. It's got electric drive motors. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And here's the frunk. No motor, of course. Granted, it's not that huge. There's all kinds of electronics in here, but kind of like an old Volkswagen Beetle with a space in the front. Now there's one thing you have to realize about Teslas. The man does not share his information with anyone. I've been a mechanic for 53 years. I go to my all data information system that has most cars in the world. Doesn't have Teslas. They will not share repair information with anyone. You're at the beck and call of the dealership when it comes to repairs. Now of course it's new electric cars. They get a lot of software updates and stuff like that. But they're kind of playing by a different ball game, because you take a normal car, it's got an OBD port. By law it has to, because it's a gasoline engine, and that has a lot to do with the pollution that the car puts out. If it puts out too much pollution, your check engine light comes on. Being an electric car, it doesn't put out pollution directly, so they don't have to go by any of those laws. So they don't have to give any of that repair information out by law, because they're electric cars. Now I gotta say, they're beautiful, quiet cars. The prices are coming down. This particular one was like $45,000, and it's a 2020, and the new models they're saying now it's $37,000. They're realizing they're overpriced because the market is going to change with electric cars radically. There's a Chinese company that now makes electric cars, and they're selling them in China for less than $5,000. So the prices are certainly going to be coming down on these more expensive ones. Now, is the infrastructure of the United States ready for millions of electric cars? Probably not. You have to consider that as of 2021, Tesla sold a little bit less than 500,000 cars worldwide. So we're not talking about a massive amount of electric cars out there yet. If you're comfortable with a car, then you put a 220 volt charger on your house that'll fully charge it in about 8 hours. And if you're near a Tesla supercharging station, it can take 45 minutes to charge it up. And if you're traveling around, of course, the fancy computer screen is going to show you how much you should have left. And like right here, it says 66% and you run low. It'll show you the nearest charging station that's around. In most cases, it's not like you're stuck in the middle of the desert with no water. There's lots of places that can have cars charged up. But in one of these Teslas, do not run out until you're almost completely out of power, and then you go to somebody's house and you're going to plug it into a 110 volt charger, because it will probably take days to get a full charge by then. That's going a little bit too far. Now, you never know what the future's going to bring. There's already places in Canada and Europe I've seen where guys have a pickup truck to rescue people, and they have a big battery pack or a generator on it, and they can supercharge it so that in 10-15 minutes you can get another 40 miles of range and you can drive to a place with a supercharger on it. If electric cars get popular enough, there's going to be lots of services like those around. But I always joke with people back in Houston, imagine if there were 1.5 million electric cars in Houston. The freeways would be just covered with people on the side of the road with cars that had no electricity left. And of course, you can't jump start them. You jump start them, they'd go, and as soon as you disconnected the cables, they'd stop running. So it'll probably be a long time before electric cars become a generic thing that everybody drives. These are unique vehicles for people that, if they understand what they're getting for what they pay, and they're happy with it, they're excellent vehicles. Now me, I'm a cheapskate. I'll keep riding around my $300 Celica. Although I have to admit, and I'm asking again, if anybody out there is coming out with an electric motor conversion kit for the Celica, send me one, bring it over. I'd love to convert it over. It would make an interesting thing to do. Or be in my wife's $3,000 Lexus. That's my idea of luxury. A beautiful car for $3,000. But on the other hand, like I said, the prices of these has actually come down. That the base Model 3 is now down to like $37,000. Now she modified it with these cool looking wheels, which are 1 inch bigger. And she noticed she has a little bit less acceleration, and of course, being heavier, there's more mass, it'll use a little bit more electricity. But if it only costs you $6 to fill the thing up with electricity, who cares if you spend another $1? Okay, what's that flying behind me? It's a Tesla Model X Gull wing. Now, of course, the company didn't give me one because they don't like me, but it's all for a charity. I'm making a video, so you don't have to worry. I actually have one now, and they can't take it away because they didn't have anything to do with it. Now, even a used one of these goes for 93 grand. Some of the new ones, well over $130,000. And yes, it has the Gull wing rear doors. Not the front ones, just the rear ones. And just to prove it's real, look. The Gulls have decided to evacuate themselves on the back of the window, so it kind of fits right in the back end. Now this is an older one. This one's 2019. So it goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, which of course is insanely fast. But the newer ones do it in 1.9 seconds. You'll see how fast it is later, but they are extremely fast vehicles. There's no arguing that. Now, personally, I find it to be just a bland, ugly-looking car unless the wings are up. If I was driving it, I'd want the wings up in the air so it looked cool. Now, when you look inside with the windows open and the doors up in the air, hey, it is cool and wide open, I gotta say. And there, look, it's telling you. There it is. You can't drive. You gotta close it before it'll start. Me, I'd rather be driving around like this. Looks like some kind of fancy Star Wars outfit or a Batmobile in the 21st century, but you can't do that. You can only look at it this way. Oh, what a shame. Down it comes. Well, that certainly made a funky noise. Let's check the other one. Hey, that made that little cow noise too. To get out, you gotta push the button again. But help, the button isn't working. So much for electric doors. I'm trapped, help. We're in here, I gotta say. This front window is humongous. You really get a good view. Warning, warning, finally, the door's starting to open. It's sticking. Well, it finally decided it's gonna open itself. Quick, get me out of here. This thing's trying to eat me. Okay, so it's got some kind of safety feature. I understand. I want it with the wings open driving because it would look cool. Well, it's not safe, so it won't open. I want a door handle to get out. I don't want to push some button that doesn't do anything or opens a little and then stops and starts honking at me. Now, realize one thing about these cars. They make them aerodynamic so they go further, so they're relatively low to the ground. You're not going to be flying over speed bumps on these babies. You can see this thing scraped a whole bunch of times already. Now, this is all-wheel drive. It's got two motors, one to drive the front, one to drive the back. They're an interesting design, there's no arguing that. You're not going to really get stuck, but of course, on the other hand, you can't take this thing off-road. It's too low. Plus, the battery's way down the bottom, keeps the center of gravity low, makes the ride a bit rough, as you'll see when we take it for a ride. But it makes it handle quite well. These things are really fun to drive. Actually, they're a little bit too much fun to drive with the horsepower that they have. Now, of course, this has got that Tesla autonomous driving thing that they've been going back and forth on. Do you pay extra for it? Do you not pay extra for it? Does it actually work? You've seen some of the cars have actually run into things. I personally would never trust anything like that. Now, sure, the average driver doesn't know what they're doing. And if machines drove us instead, there would certainly be less accidents today. All it takes is a handful of accidents, and the lawyers are going to come out of the woodwork and sue everybody involved in it. That's just a fact. And if you've ever done any type of analysis of car drivers, any real scientist can tell you one thing. You cannot combine self-driving cars with human being driving cars on the same road. If everybody has an autonomous car, yeah. That's what the 5G was made for. They can all talk to each other. Realize 5G has a relatively short range, right? But it's still at least a quarter of a mile, half a mile. Cars only need to know what all the cars within the next quarter, half a mile are doing, and it's fine. But you put some human in between driving a car, the machine has no idea what those people are going to do. And of course, everybody's not going to go out and buy $100-something-thousand car right away either. So there's going to be a ton of cars out there that are dumb cars that are completely driven by people, and you can't mix the two because the people confuse the machines and then wham, out they go. So if you're thinking about getting something because it's going to drive itself, you'll be waiting a long time before that is actual truth. They can help, they can drive themselves in certain situations, but you shouldn't be in the back seat going on Facebook while the car's driving itself. It can't handle unforeseen circumstances all that well. It's a computer, it gets confused. Because when you think about it, computers are binary logic. They can only do 0 and 1. Hey, I can do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can do all kinds of things, right? But a machine can only do 0 and 1. And once it goes on the wrong 0 or the wrong 1, it goes on the wrong track. And that's why you turn machines off that are electronically controlled. And when you turn them on, they might work again. Well, not such a great idea if you're going 80 miles an hour. You can't just all going to turn it off now and turn it on again. No. Self-driving cars, People talk about the future is going to be self-driving cars. Yeah, when they're all self-driving cars on their own roads with no humans interacting. If they can talk to each other, great, but who's going to buy all that stuff? Same thing with electric cars. Who's going to make the electricity? It's bad enough there's no place to charge them. If they built 5 million charging stations, where's that electricity going to come through? Hey, there's a charger here at my house here. The previous guy had one. And it works. If you go far enough that you can make it there and back and charge it at home, yeah, you can do it at home. And these have a pretty decent range to them. This particular one's rated at 295, and I've had people drive them and go 290 miles, and they made it to a charger. They do have decent range. Realize, this is a car. This isn't a pickup truck. You're not pulling a trailer, pickup bed that you're putting tons of gravel in. It's only pulling itself. It's geared so that on a highway, it can go quite a distance. It's got 2 motors after all. You're not just dependent on one. They keep spinning faster and faster and faster, and they can do efficient in town and on the highway because they got a 2 setup. Let's take it for a spin. The weird doors that you touch to get in. Of course, it doesn't make any noise, and we'll roll the windows up so it's even quieter. Great navigation map, of course. Look, reverse. Now it's in reverse. We're going backwards. It's got cameras all over the place. And then when you're on forward, pull down to drive. It's that simple. There's definitely no gear shifting in this. Now we'll take it on a bumpy Rhode Island road here. As we hit the bumps, you feel them. It's not a luxury ride. Now it's supposed to take off fast with instant torque, so let's see what happens when we step on the gas. It takes off fast, but we can't go for long, we'll hit everybody. And I do have to say, with this giant front window, man, you can see all over the place. I feel like I'm in some kind of spaceship. And of course it has regenerative braking, so when you take your foot off the brake, it starts slowing down by itself and regenerates power. You gotta get used to that, because if you let go of the gas, the car will come to a complete stop. It's something that you really have to get used to. I mean, I'm not even touching the brakes, and the thing's coming to a stop. But of course, it's the acceleration that makes this thing insane. You step on the gas, away it goes, just like a rocket ship. It has insane acceleration. There's a little thing on the bottom there, tells you what your range is. It says you can go 176 miles more. Well, I do have to say, really, for Gull wing cars, this is the neatest one I've ever been in. People are nuts about Gull wing doors. They always keep their value. So it really wouldn't matter what happens with Tesla. People just like Gull wing doors. You look at a Mercedes Gull wing door, they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, I gotta say, I am impressed by the Gull wing doors, by the speed, by the gigantic windshield. Yes, it's a fascinating car. But on the other hand, a used one of these is going for $93,000. The new ones are well over that, and it is an electric car that you have to recharge as you drive it around. Granted, it does have a pretty good range. All that money, to me, I don't know if you're going to break even. You saw, it's a rough riding on bumps. It's smooth and handles great on smooth roads. But the battery alone weighs 1,377 pounds, and being under here, you have a lot of weight low. It just doesn't handle bumps all that well. Now, I've driven the Audi electric car, and it handles much better because, of course, it's a car company that made luxury cars. I'm not a fan of Audi either, but they are fun to drive. They're not fun to fix, but they're fun to drive. But their electric car was designed by a company that made luxury cars. Then they decided to make a luxury electric car. Tesla, on the other hand, decided to make electric cars. They didn't have any real experience in luxury suspensions and all this stuff. And a lot of the stuff's kind of added on that, yeah, they are super fast. There's no arguing that. But for somebody who wants a really luxurious ride, they leave quite a bit to be desired for a true driving connoisseur. If you don't believe me, road test one of these and road test an Audi, and I guarantee you, you'll find the Audi is a much better handling and riding cars over bumps. It's a superior machine when it comes to that. Now, personally, I'd buy neither because it costs too much money. If I get one of these, it's exactly what this says. I rent one. You can see for all the money these cars cost, here's the one side of the door. That's a little worn, and that isn't. But this side, the paint's all worn off of it. And the gap here, look at the paint. The paint's wavery. Not the greatest paint job in the world. A little better here, but you can still see there's a bunch of lump of overspray when they painted it. Check it out. The gap's here little, then the gap gets big. Here, the gap's big the whole way. One side doesn't even match the other. Let me tell you one thing. If you looked at an Audi electric car, it matches perfectly. It's a luxury car. It's made by people who've been making them a long time. I'm not a fan because they cost too much. They cost a fortune to fix. But when these things break, they cost a fortune to fix too. Hardly anybody works on them. You're waiting months for parts. I've had customers with them sometimes 3-4 months, no car. Oh, we're waiting on parts, they say. The guy builds cars and he wants to build as many as he can to sell them. Does he build spare parts? No. If something happens, you can't get spare parts for it. He doesn't care. And there's very little aftermarket for these things. You know, you're pretty much stuck. I personally can't do much heavy duty work on him because he doesn't share repair information. I've got all data that does almost every car in the world. Doesn't do Teslas. He won't pass the information on. You're going to be stuck with them fixing it when they do break down. Realize that. Audi dealers are bad enough with what they charge, but at least they have parts for their cars. So here we have the Gull winged Model X. I like it with the Gull wings up, not so much with them down. It is extremely fast. There's no arguing that. If you are a speed demon, you'd love a car like this, but then you'd probably get so many tickets, you'd say, I wish I never bought that car. It's costing me too much money. This particular brand new Model Y comes from TeslaRents.com. Pretty cool. Interesting idea. I'd never buy one, I'm too cheap. But renting one, not that bad of a deal. Now you're gonna win a fancy Model Y. It's the one that has the dual motor system and all-wheel drive. Now if you're into dark, gray, black, whatever you want to call it, check it out. This is one dark car. Of course you can make things brighter, but this guy really likes dark stuff. Check it out. Kind of like a spaceship. And there's tons of room in the back. I feel like I'm in a spaceship. Watch this. Push open. The trunk opens, and even has a little warning light that's open. Then when you close it, space shuttle, ready for takeoff. Now be forewarned, you better be into technology if you get one of these, because check it out. It doesn't have a key. It's got a card key. Then you have to put the PIN number in to drive it. It's ready to drive. Here we go. There's the gear shift. It looks like a turn signal. Really nice viewed mirror, I do have to say. You got a good picture all around. Talk about quiet. But let's test it out on a bumpy road. We got some real bumpy roads here in Rhode Island. Let's see what it feels like. It stops the bump. It's okay, but I'm not overly impressed by the shock system, truthfully. My wife's Lexus is smoother than this, and it's 19 years old. One thing that's cool is this. You take your foot off the gas. Look, I'm not touching the brake. The car has braked itself. The regenerative brake in these cars works quite well. Maybe too well. It stopped well before the stop sign. Now realize that this is an all-wheel drive. It's got two motors in the front and the back. So it's got a lot of power. Let's see what it does on our little straightaway. All right, we're going 0. Let's floor it and see what it does. It is like a roller coaster ride. This baby's got acceleration, there's no doubting that. And it does have an insanely tight steering system. You turn that wheel a little, this baby's like a race car. I've driven Formula 1 cars, got pretty close handling of that. It's got immaculate handling. There's no arguing that. Although, as I say, the ride's a little bit rough for me. But on the other hand, the handling is so immaculate, I'd live with the somewhat bumpy ride on rough roads. Now, my wife, that's another story. She probably wouldn't like it. But if you like quiet, this thing's quiet. And the seats are very comfy. Now, of course, all kinds of controls. You put the home screen. You can get all kinds of stuff. You can adjust the mirrors, the steering wheel, the window lock, your display brightness. You can make it brighter or dimmer. You can mess with just about everything on these. It takes a while getting used to this turn signal shifter. I'm like, where's park? Well, when you go here, there's park. You push that, then it goes into park. Now I just have to figure out how to turn the thing off. Like I say, if you're not into electronics and gizmos, don't buy one of these cars. Well, I looked it up on the internet, and it says put it in park, which I have, then open the door. There's no door handle, but there's a button. It claims that'll turn it off. Let's see if that worked. Well, yes, indeed, it seemed to work, because when I open the door, there's no power steering now, meaning the vehicle is turned off. There's also buttons you can push on the dash. Let me tell you, if one of these things ever breaks, I'm glad it's not going to be me who's fixing them. I can just imagine the things that can go wrong with this. And for those of you who regularly lose your car keys, don't lose your little card. I'd say get a few of them, put them in good places. There's a lot of room in one of these babies. Look at all this space. There's a lot of leg room. They're comfortable cars. I'll give them that. Big old trunk too. Now technically this is a small crossover SUV. Only this is the dual motor, so it's got motor front and back, and it's extremely fast. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds and has a top top speed that's limited to 150 miles an hour. Now, they claim it has a range of 303 miles. This one seems to go about 280 or so miles. And the dual electric motors put out 450 horsepower. Now, the battery, which is on the bottom of the car, it weighs a whopping 1,200 pounds. The one disadvantage of having big electric cars, they have big, heavy electric batteries. Now, I asked the owner about range and recharging, and he said it was about half full coming here. He went to a Tesla supercharge station, and it took about 25 minutes to put in a half charge. You got to plan this ahead. It's going to take some time. Big, powerful batteries take a long time to recharge. That's just how it is in the electric car world. The compact crossover, man, this baby's got space. If this wasn't enough, of course, you can put the seats down if you want, but there's even room under here. Electric cars have an awful lot of space. Since they don't have engines and transmissions, they got space in the front too. Kind of like a Volkswagen Beetle. Not a particularly large amount of space, just like the old Beetle. But there's space nevertheless. You can put a good cooler in there. But you can hear when I close the front trunk. Batteries weigh so much, they gotta compensate to get rid of weight. Not the most solid construction. Now, this is a brand new car, but check it out. Here's the passenger side. Look at the size of the gap here. On the driver's side, it's almost touching. It isn't built all that well in terms of fit. You would never see such a wide gap from one side to the other in, say, a Lexus. And of course, they have gimmicks like these flush door handles that you push and then it pops up. But even then, you still got to kind of reach in here and grab out, which is not that comfortable. You would have thought with all this technology, hey, they might have thought of something that popped out a little bit better or had something to grab other than having to stick your hand in there like you're jerry-rigging something. But I do have to say they're fun to drive around, even though it's weird sitting behind a wheel where there's nothing in front of you but this fake wood veneer stuff. Everything is on a giant screen. You can open the trunk, close the trunks, do everything on the screen. So truly, you'd have to call this a minimalist car. Obviously, that was designed. There's nothing here. Most of it is very minimal. It's a good thing there's a large backup screen to look at, because look at the rear window. It has a very restricted view. When you're driving down the highway, you're not seeing behind you all that well. They went for a cool look, but making that cool look makes a very limited view when you're driving a car out the back. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.